Hello and welcome to the Finding a Career in Publishing virtual information session with Hachette Book Group. SNHU Career Services is excited to present this presentation with our employer guest. First, we would like you to know that your experience with SNHU is important to us. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please reach out to the respective center. Online students can reach the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. Campus students can reach the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone calling 603-644-3118. And finally, any SNHU staff or faculty may reach the Human Resource Office at hr@snhu.edu. Keep in mind also that SNHU Career Services is an included resources during and after your academic journey with SNHU. It's a lifetime benefit, and our SNHU Career Services team can assist with resume reviews, practice interview techniques, job search guidance, and much more. You can connect with our team at either engagecareer@snhu.edu or cocecareer@snhu.edu, or you can call us at 1-888-672-1458. We also recommend that you check out the Handshake career website and platform if you haven't already. All SNHU students should have an account and can sign in with their mySNHU login credentials. Complete your Handshake profile, apply to jobs and internships, explore career events, network with employer contacts, and SNHU students and others in the nationwide Handshake community. Also, take advantage of the social networks available to SNHU community members, including LinkedIn, Facebook, X or Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Finally, without further ado, I'd like to pass the virtual microphone to our employer guest, Leah Hartman from Hachette Book Group. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm Leah Hartman. I'm the HR associate / recruiter at Hachette. Can everyone see the screen? Okay, I see it, so that seems good. And I'm joined today by Avni Goswami, our HR assistant, who's also here.
Hi, everybody.
I apologize for looking at both places. I never know exactly where to look, but we are very happy to be here. And what a turnout. We did not know it was going to be this many people, so hopefully we live up to those expectations. In terms of our agenda, we're going to start off going through the publishing process. And tell you just a little bit more about, what publishing is, and the different departments and avenues that might be interesting to you. And then we'll switch gears and talk a bit about HBG in particular. We'll go into life at HBG, and then we'll go over some resume and cover letter tips. And we're hoping that we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&As. You can feel free to type questions throughout, in the chat, and then we'll kind of go through, or you can wait until we're done, and you can always unmute yourselves and ask any questions. But to start off.
So to start off, basically, if you ever walk into a bookstore or you're shopping for books online, I bet something that comes to mind is, how did these books get here? How are these books made? And so we really want to go over the process of all the different people that touch the book before it's put out into the world.
Okay. So we like this graph a lot, or this image a lot, because I think it breaks down a lot of the opportunities that you might have in publishing. I think when people think of publishing, just like I did before I got into the industry, I kind of only thought that it was for people in editorial. And that is so not the case. Of course, editorial is a big part of our business, but there's so many other opportunities within publishing. And in the center of this image are the corporate functions that exist within the company. HR is a corporate function, marketing strategy, sales, communications, legal, finance, IT. And then on the outskirts are the more publishing specific departments that really, have a hand in the publishing process. And I'll go over each department a little bit more specifically. So again, when people think of publishing, they think of editorial, usually. And we, of course, have tons of editors and large editorial groups. And what they do is they work with literary agents to acquire titles for us to publish. A literary agent is someone who discovers writers and will work to sell books to other publishing professionals. So editors oftentimes are, meeting pretty frequently with agents. Agents are oftentimes sending manuscripts to editors that they might be interested in. And if an editor reviews a manuscript and says, this is great, we got to buy this, they'll acquire the title. They'll negotiate the terms of the contract with the agent and the author. And then it's the editor's job to develop and edit the books for publication. Like many publishing houses, it's a confusing structure, which is fun. And every editorial department is broken out by imprint. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about every, publishing group that we have at Hachette. But for example, we have a publishing group called Orbit. They publish sci-fi and fantasy imprints or titles, and they have their own editorial team. So they have a group of people that will acquire titles only for Orbit. And they want to make sure, when editors look at manuscripts and projects, they want to make sure it aligns with their imprint and what they publish. The next group is contracts. The contracts group will work very closely with editorial and the literary agent to negotiate the contract for our authors when we are acquiring a title. Any changes to rights are often handled by contracts. I think you don't have to be a legal professional to work in contracts. I think a lot of times it's more for people who, love books, like to negotiate a bit, and also have a really great, attention to detail. I think there's a lot of, back and forth and amending contracts and kind of working creatively with our agents to get the best possible deal for our imprints, but also for the author. Then we have managing editorial. I think people get editorial and managing editorial confused a lot. I would say the big difference is editorial looks at editing, the big overarching edits of a manuscript, character development, things like that. And managing editorial will look at the nitty-gritty details of a manuscript and edits that piece. So, if someone has auburn hair at the beginning of a chapter, did it change to, blonde towards the end? Or, just making sure that things are really consistent throughout. So they'll oversee, a lot of the copy editing, the proofreading, the indexing of a title. And they also serve as the main hub of communication. So ManEd will usually set the schedule of publication for all of our departments. So if I say, we have a title and we want it to be published and released on June, 7th, managing editorial will say, okay, that means editorial, you need to have your edits done by January X, and art, you need to have your art stuff, your covers done by this date, and production, you have to have this piece done by this time, and they just make sure that everything is kind of moving in the right direction. Then we have production, and production oversees the physical transformation of a book. So, if you've seen books and sometimes they're, glossy cover, or if you felt the paper and sometimes it's rough or it has, jagged edges. So production are the ones that are making those decisions on what that physical book will look like. And they work really closely with our printing houses and our shipping companies to ensure that, the book looks the way that we want and it's on our way to the warehouse. A lot of times those decisions, of course, driven by budget. A lot of times the glossy covers, the big coffee table books, that can be a lot more expensive. So sometimes the budget is kind of what determines what the book will look like. But they'll look at the colors to make sure, the red is the right red that we want, or it doesn't look too red, or, maybe it needs to be softer, and they kind of work on all of that. And then we have design. Similar to editorial, design is a group that is very specific to the publishing imprint. So every imprint has their own design group, and they'll be responsible for creating the covers and any interiors for every title. Sometimes they work closely with the authors on that to get their feedback. Sometimes, it's more their decisions, and they'll work with the editorial team and marketing and sales to make sure that they're, creating a cover that will entice readers and buyers. Then we have marketing. So once the book is, starting that process, the marketing team will be responsible for creating the marketing strategies for our titles. So marketing, a lot of times, I like to say the difference between marketing and publicity is that marketing is paid advertisement and publicity is usually free advertisement. So the marketers will look at negotiating and purchasing ad space on, variety of platforms and social media platforms. They might create, posters and displays for book events or bookmarks, or create book trailers and blogs and websites for the campaign. And then, as I mentioned, publicity is kind of the free publicity and the free press. So, the publicity team will look at booking the author on, different talk shows, trying to get media attention and coverage, coordinate appearances for the author. And it's really, kind of creating this reception for the public with the author and what their title is. Another department is subsidiary rights. This is a pretty niche area to publishing. And what subrights does is that they'll look at how we can create additional sources of profit from the title. And they'll look at selling the rights that were granted to the publisher from the author during that contract stage. A lot of times that means selling the rights to be translated in other languages in other countries, but that can also include, book club rights, serial rights, audio and ebook rights, paperback rights, and other things. You don't have to, speak another language, I think, to work in subrights. I think plenty of people, but I think a lot of times it's someone who, has an interest in other countries and enjoys, the travel piece of it. Then we have sales, and we have a huge sales group that looks to sell the books to buyers in retail and wholesale outlets. So we have a number of different sales, groups within our overall sales team that will focus on specific markets. So we have, a few individuals that works with Barnes and Noble. We have an Amazon group. We have an area that works in special markets. So if you, see a cookbook at, Urban Outfitters, that special markets group is the one looking at, where can we sell our books in non-traditional areas and non-traditional markets. Then we have our audio team. We have a group that our audio team will produce and sell over 700 titles a year. So they produce the audiobooks for all of our publishing divisions, as well as some of our client publishers. They are a small but mighty team. And actually, Avni and I both work in the New York office, and in the New York office, there are a couple of recording studios. So you can actually, and they have headphones outside, so you can listen when an author or an actor is in to read for their title. I've only been starstruck like once or twice, but it's very exciting. In terms of some other corporate functions, so as I mentioned, we have an IT team. They're, the ones that make sure that we can do something like this, and all of our computers are working, and all the, internal or, the tech stuff is all working. We have HR, which, is a department that both Avni and I are in, and we work with, employees. We do recruiting, we work with any employee relations issues, training, development, kind of anything and everything for our employees. We do have a legal team that will handle, tons of different things that may come up from our publishing groups, from the corporate side. They'll handle any commercial transactions, IP issues, First Amendment issues, any corporate issues that are going on. They're really wonderful. Then we have a finance team. So our finance team, we have a corporate finance team that works at, forecasting and budgeting and planning for the corporate side. And then we also have a number of finance individuals that work to support our publishing imprints, and they'll they're tasked with making, the best financial decisions for our publishing groups. You may have an editor have a project and come into the acquisitions meeting and say, I want to give $1 million, like we got to get this book. And finance will say, okay, that isn't going to be the best decision. They'll kind of work with our editors to make sure that they are making, good decisions. We also have a communications team. They work on our internal and external communications. They, do tons of company events. We have an intranet site called Bookends, and they help manage that. They, do a lot of different things. They do book donations, tons and tons of different projects that they do both for, the company, but also for our external perception. And now we'll talk a little bit more about, HBG in particular.
So as you can see, this is our mission statement. It's short and sweet, and basically it's just to publish great books well. And this translates into our vision statement as well.
I lost my mouse, sorry. There we
go. So our vision is to be the #1 destination for our authors, agents, customers, client publishers, and employees. We also want to be a respected publisher that values diversity, nurtures talent, rewards success, and honors our responsibilities. And so diversity is definitely something that we value here at HBG and take very seriously. So we also want to be market focused in all we do. We want to look at all the different trends and lead a change in popular culture. And of course, we also want to anticipate what's coming next. We want to foster the creativity of our employees and our authors, and really be a great destination for them to work and to come to for everything. So this is just HBG in a few numbers. We are the #1 provider of distribution services to U.S. trade publishers, and that can mean anything from audio support, customer service, and much more to many clients such as Disney, Marvel, National Geographic, and more. So we're also a division of Hachette Livre, and so that's under our parent company, Lagardère, and so that's the 3rd largest trade and educational book publisher in the world. Leading off of that, we are also the leading U.S. trade publisher with the 4th largest market share. And so in 2022 alone, HBG had 200 titles on the bestseller list. And so 28 of those reached #1, which is definitely an achievement that we're super proud of. And this is due to the responsibility of 1,600 employees in 11 locations. So right now we have offices in Berkeley, Boston, Boulder, Indiana, Nashville, North Adams, New York, Philly, Portland, and Toronto. And so we publish around 2,100 new books annually. And so among the other 5 major publishers that bring out from 2K to 5,500 books per year, HBG publishes, on the lower end of that, but basically that kind of goes back to our mission statement as well. We have a high ratio of bestsellers to books published, which is definitely something that we want to highlight and something that we value when it comes to our books and our authors. We also have 36,000 backlist titles available. And so what backlist titles are books that came out for over a year ago. And these titles can become relevant again when something comes up, say, in trends or in current events. And so our backlist title revenue can shoot way up if something gets popular again. And that's definitely a great thing, and definitely a reason why backlist is so important. And we also do have 7,500 audiobooks available. In terms of our distribution center, so we have a distribution center located in Lebanon, Indiana, and we ship more than 200 million books every year from it. We're also home to some of the world's best-selling authors. As you can see on the screen, there might be some familiar faces or names that you recognize, and we're always looking to grow this list and introduce new authors to the world. So yeah.
Something else that I think is pretty important to Hachette our awards and distinctions. Our authors and titles have garnered major awards. Most recently, LBYR, our children's imprint, which we'll talk a little bit in the next few slides, just won another Caldecott medal, so we can change that to 14. But we've also won 34 Pulitzer Prizes, 13 National Book Awards, 11 Newbery Medals, 9 Grammy Awards, and 4 Nobel Peace Prizes. And you'll see on the right-hand side some of those titles and authors that have won those major awards. But we're very, lucky to be able to work with some of these authors. And now we'll switch gears and talk a little bit more specifically about our publishing groups. So again, as I mentioned, publishing is a confusing structure. We have about 10 overarching publishing groups. And a theme in many publishing companies is that we might have an overarching publishing division that focus and specialize on certain genres, and then there will be a number of sub-imprints that may, focus a little further. So, for example, I'll just go through some of our groups. So we have Basic Books Group, and they primarily publish serious narrative nonfiction. They have a number of sub-imprints, and they also publish some feminist works, specifically under Seal Press. Grand Central Publishing is one of our larger publishing divisions. They publish fiction, nonfiction, history titles, celebrity memoirs, romance, political titles, really anything and everything under a number of their sub-imprints. I've mentioned Hachette Audio. They're considered a publishing division, and they produce our audiobooks for all of our publishing groups. We have Hachette Books that publishes only nonfiction titles, but a wide range. Again, memoirs, financial titles, health and wellness titles, again, really anything and everything under nonfiction. We have Hachette Nashville, which is our imprint that's primarily based in our Nashville office, and they publish in the Christian inspirational market, both children's and adults. We have Little Brown and Company, which I like to say is kind of similar in Grand Central in that they publish anything and everything and a wide range of genres. And they have some sub-imprints that may focus and specialize. So, for example, Mulholland Books publishes crime and thriller novels. But overall, Little Brown publishes, fiction, celebrity memoirs, nonfiction titles, again, kind of anything and everything. And then we have Little Brown Books for Young Readers. They're our children's imprint. They publish picture books, middle grade, YA titles, both fiction and nonfiction. They also have a really nice licensing program that allows us to work with other, TV shows or movies or musicals, and we can create books based on that. We have Orbit, which I mentioned is our sci-fi and fantasy imprint. Running Press Group has a lot of different things. They only publish nonfiction, but they publish, they also have Avalon Travel, which is our travel imprint, and they publish the Rixties and Moon travel guides. They're based out of Berkeley. We have Black Dog and Leventhal, which publishes primarily illustrative works. And then we have Running Press, which publishes nonfiction titles more in the pop culture sphere. And we also have the Running Press miniatures, which I have an example of what that looks like, but they're really cute little mini gift sets. They do really well, especially over the holiday time. And then we have Workman Publishing. Workman we actually acquired about 2 years ago, and with that acquisition came about 300 employees and a number of sub-imprints. So Workman publishes both fiction and nonfiction, children's, adults. They, when we acquired Workman, it really expanded a lot of our offerings, especially in the, creative craft sphere. They also publish the Workman calendars. So those are like page-a-day calendars or desk calendars. And they also do the Brain Quest series, which I never know how to call, what you call those flip book things, but those flip books. And they also have workbooks, which I devoured when I was a kid. And then here are just some of our, some of the different categories and genres that we publish across all of our groups. So sci-fi, literary fiction, commercial fiction, classics, romance. Under nonfiction, we do, big ideas, current events, food, psychology, humor, sports, memoirs, again, kind of anything and everything.
We also publish books for children of all ages. And as Leah was mentioning, we have multiple different imprints that publish children's books, like Little Brown Books for Young Readers, Workman Kids, Algonquin Young Readers, and many others. So as you can see here, we have a lot of exciting children's books. And we also publish a lot of different things. So for example, we have travel guides, we have calendars, we publish journals, and we have the mini kits, as we mentioned, that are good little gifts. You can see that fun red guy at the end.
That's my favorite. I've told Ebony this probably a million times, but I saw someone dress up as that for Halloween, like the tube guy, and I was in Central Park, and people, like children, were following this person around. It was like a great costume. Um, and then we also, while we produce, we have our own editors that go out and acquire titles and work with agents. We also provide some services to other publishers. So here on the right-hand side, you'll see some of our distribution clients. It can depend based on our agreement what service we will provide, but a lot of times it's warehouse support, fulfillment support, customer service support. Sometimes it's audio support. So it can really vary, but we have a number of client services or some of our services that we provide to our clients, and it's a really great way, a really great additional revenue stream for us. So we'll switch gears to talk a little bit about life at HBG. And to start off, Avni already mentioned, but I think it's really important to kind of go over our commitment to DEI. And HBG believes in, representing diverse voices across all aspects of our business. And we really want our publishing programs to reflect, the broad range of backgrounds and experiences and political views. And it's really important to us to publish books for all readers. Within the company, we want to create a culture where employees feel supported, safe, included, and really create, an environment that's welcoming for all of our employees. One of the things that we have is a DEI advisory board. I'm not sure if anybody is aware, but we Carrie Bloxon is our VP Chief Diversity Officer, and she's absolutely wonderful. I do not know how she gets everything done in a day, but she kind of runs this advisory board where a number of employees will be selected. They have to submit something, and then they're selected as this advisory board to kind of advise the company on decisions and kind of get a seat at the table to give feedback for certain, company decisions or things going on. The advisory board it's a 2-year term, and then, a new advisory board joins. I believe there's now a new board that just joined in 2024, which is really exciting. So it's a really great way to kind of learn a little bit more about, how people are feeling with certain ideas and changes that may happen to the company. We also have some other subcommittees and events and things like that we do. We have a program called Read Our World, where we highlight, the diversity within our publishing groups, and employees can order, 2 of the books out of that list, and you listen to a presentation to hear people speak about some of those titles. So there are a lot of different ways that we're able to kind of create that culture. And we're also always open, employees work at other companies, they come to us. There might be plenty of ideas and things that we are not thinking of that we want to bring to the company. So we're always kind of looking at ways where we can improve this overall.
So we also have a number of employee resource groups. As you can see here, listed here are the ones we have currently. We have employees of color, Black, Latinx, women in publishing, Asian, Pacific American, LGBTQIA, and trans and gender non-conforming, non-majority religions, employees with disabilities, and working parents and caregivers. And so these are just some of the employee resource groups, which are basically groups led by employees who share a common identity. And so anyone is welcome to join. Even interns are welcome to join. We have a lot of interns joining these as well. And they meet like once a month or twice a month. And this is a great way to get to know your fellow employees and also, just get to share a space with people who share a common identity. And so in terms of some of the programs that we have at HBG, we have some training programs, including publishing curriculum, which is a series of presentations on different departments. There's also including like some panels to kind of give some insight information as to like what marketing is about, what publicity is about, editorial, sales, contracts. We have a number of different presentations, and this is similar to our Make It Your Business summer speaker series, which is available for our summer interns as well. And basically, that's also a series of presentations and panels to give employees, interns, an idea about what all the different departments do and like their day-to-day, what their day-to-day looks like. We also have something called Open Meetings Week, which is a week in which many meetings are open to everybody at the company to sit in on. I personally think like the design meetings are really fun during Open Meetings Week because you get to see like the different cover designs that they were going to choose. And so it's really interesting to sit in on different departments' meetings. We also do have a management training program and leadership development. We have a lot of author events, something called Coffee Connection, which is actually a program that Leah started, which is a great program for employees to connect and meet over coffee. It's a really good way to meet employees that maybe you never met before in different departments. And I personally love that program. We also have other events like book giveaways and sales and discounts, book clubs with employees. We also have other ways to get involved, include all employee meetings, our mentorship program, and we also have an initiative called HBG Unplugged. Basically, we just encourage everybody to log off at 5 when they can and take all their vacation days and advantage of our sabbatical program for employees who've been here for a bit longer.
So now, hopefully, the very exciting part, we'll talk a little bit about some tips to kind of break into the publishing industry. This is so I think the first step a lot of times is just to read up on publishing. I think both Ebony and I screen candidates and recruit, and I think we're both always very impressed when a candidate knows something that's going on in the industry or some industry news. I'm always, very impressed. I think it just shows your interest in the industry and that you're, seeking out the information. There are some really great specific publishing websites like Publishers Weekly, Media Bistro, Pub Lunch. A lot of times those websites will send out like daily emails of just like headline news. So you just sign up and then you get an email and then you can skim it and you're kind of aware of what's going on. There are some really great social media sites as well, Latinos in Publishing, POC in Publishing, We Need Diverse Books, so many different organizations and nonprofits that are in publishing, and they have really robust social media accounts. We'll tag them when we start, internship recruitment, or if there's an event going on that's open to everyone, and they'll kind of repost that. So I think if you're interested again in publishing, it may be worth, following some of those organizations, and then you might just be, more aware when things are going on. I think it's also just helpful to read the New York Times bestsellers list or any of the bestsellers lists. It's important to kind of know the trends in publishing and what people are reading. I think especially if you're interested in editorial, hopefully at a certain point in your career, you're going to be the one acquiring and kind of setting those trends. And it's important to be aware of what's popular because it changes and things come back in style and things, and you just want to kind of be aware of what people are reading. The next step is to explore our career opportunities. I know I see some questions coming in, so I hope I'll answer a big chunk of them, but if not, again, we'll have time at the end. But I think one of the best ways to learn about publishing and see if it's an area or an industry that you're interested in is to get an internship. We offer paid internships for college students as well as, honestly, you don't have to be a student. You don't have to be you could be a recent graduate. You could be someone who's looking for a career change. There's no, kind of limit on that. But our program runs every fall, spring, and summer. We have not started recruiting for our summer internships just yet. They will be posted in early or mid-February. And typically our summer program is the largest program and we'll have opportunities and internship opportunities in, editorial, marketing, publicity, sales, production, audio, communications. Because it's a larger program, we have, we can have more internship, more departments involved. As an intern, you'll get to work with professionals. You'll get to gain hands-on publishing experience. You get to, own some of your own special projects. As someone who has interned before, I've had some internships that were really, engaging and fun, and I had some where I didn't really do anything, and it is fun for a little bit, and then it gets really boring. And I think Hachette has a really great program where there's a lot of educational opportunities. You get to really do important work and kind of see, how your work is impacted. We have so many interns who are in marketing and publicity, and they get to kind of see a campaign from the start to the end, and they get to go to the bookstore event, and they really get to see kind of the fruits of their labor. And as Ebony mentioned, we have that summer speaker series, which is, again, a really great opportunity to learn kind of about publishing overall. You may work at a specific department and then gain exposure to another department and decide that maybe, your interest lies somewhere else, which is totally fine and totally great. And that's part of why we have that summer speakers program. So you can learn kind of beyond, the internship that you were hired to do. Just some general FAQs about our program, because we do get these questions a lot. You do not have to be an English major to work in publishing. As we've kind of talked about, there are so many different departments and opportunities. I think no matter what your interest is, no matter what your major is, you can find a place for yourself in publishing if that's what you want. I think the thing that's the most important is applying with a cover letter. I've had hiring managers say that they will not speak with anybody who doesn't apply with a cover letter. I don't love that always, but it's very important to have a cover letter. I think it's a really great way for you to highlight, why you're a fit for a role. There's the opportunity to tell us, why you're applying to a specific imprint, what books you like. And of course, writing is a big part of the industry as a whole, and especially for certain departments, it is a key part of that role, and your cover letter is your first writing sample. In terms of evaluating resumes, you don't have to have prior publishing experience, but we do want candidates who have a demonstrated interest in reading and writing and publishing. And you can get that through a number of activities. Maybe you've worked at a literary magazine, maybe you've worked at a bookstore, maybe you run a bookstagram. You can kind of highlight your interest in publishing through some of your on-campus experiences or things outside of school or anything like that. You don't have to have prior publishing experience. In terms of just our dates, again, here are some of the application dates. As I mentioned, we haven't posted our summer internships just yet. It'll come hopefully in February, and the program will likely start in June. And then here are some of our other dates, our application dates for our internships. And we'll send out the slides as well, so you will have them. You don't have to write them down. And then, of course, step 3 is to really perfect your resume and your cover letter.
So these are just some of the resume components that we usually like to tell candidates to put on their resume. So one major thing is, if you can, to keep it to 1 page. That's just because it's also much easier to read and go through all of your great experience. And some components that you want to include is contact information. So that includes your name, address, or what state you're living in, phone number, email, and a LinkedIn URL. If you have a website or portfolio, you can also include the link to that here. And make sure that all of that information is spelled correctly, just so that we can reach out to you. Sometimes it happens that we want to reach out to a candidate, but if their email is not spelled correctly or something like that, it's kind of unfortunate. So just definitely make sure to double check that information. You also want to include your college education, so any of your majors or minors, certifications that you might have had. And also we recommend including all of your work experience. So you can split this up into multiple categories, like relevant work experience and other work experience. For example, if you worked as a barista, and of course that customer service experience is really important, and we still want to see all the things that you've learned from that. But then if you also have worked at a bookstore, maybe you can put that under relevant work experience. And so we can really see the different experiences that you've had. And it's also easy to see what's relevant to this role. Also include any activities or volunteer experience, so any on-campus experience or involvement with organizations and clubs. You can also include any honors and awards. If you were on the dean's list, for example, that's something that you want to highlight on your resume, we definitely encourage you to include it. And we also encourage all applicants to include skills that they feel comfortable with. So social media is definitely an important one, especially like for marketing and publicity. So we definitely recommend including that along with Microsoft Office and any special skills. Like if you have design skills in Adobe Suite, like InDesign or Photoshop, definitely include that.
And then to talk a little bit more about that, like the experience section, because I think, that's a hard part. I think resumes and cover letters are pretty hard to craft. So just some little tips and things that we like to see. I think it's a lot easier when you use bullet points for every experience. I like to say that you want to treat the recruiters kind of like babies and you want to make it as easy as possible for us to, get all of the information that you are giving. It's a little bit more digestible when it's in bullet point form. You can do 3 to 5 bullet points per job. It's important to look at the job description as you're crafting your resume and cover letter because there may be a role where you want to talk a little bit more about something. So maybe there you'd have 5 bullet points and you might remove something from somewhere else. So things may change as, you apply to certain things and you may, kind of have different resumes based on the roles. I think it's important to look at your experience in a way where you're kind of accomplishment driven and you're using that bullet point to demonstrate, the qualities and skills that you have and why you'd be a great candidate based on the role that you're applying for. And we have a nice little formula here. So I think you'll use an action verb, you'll talk about what you did, and then you'll talk about the information and results. And I think the information and results is the really important part that a lot of people miss. So for example, instead of saying that you provide after school tutoring support, you'll say tutored approximately 10 students in chemistry and biology on a weekly basis while constantly assessing each student's needs in order to structure and scaffold instruction appropriately. So you got it, we understand now that you were a tutor at school, but now we know how many students you tutored and the magnitude. We know, how many subjects you tutored in, how often you tutored and what the, result was of that tutoring. Another example, manage student organization website, and instead you might say managed, updated, and developed website using HTML and CSS in order to maintain consistent and reliable communication with organization members. So now we know that you manage the website, but we know what systems and softwares that you have experience in, and we know what the, the impact of your work was. I think as you intern or as you do anything, one, I think you should definitely always kind of write down what you've been doing. I think it's really easy to forget. I remember at the end of an internship, I would go to update my resume and I'd be like, what the hell did I do? Like, I know I did something and I can't remember anything. So sometimes having like a notebook where you just kind of write down some of the tasks that you've done will be really helpful. And then you also kind of want to think about how did you impact the company? What were the results of the work that you did? Did you increase, clicks? Did you increase engagement? Did you increase revenue? Did you create, did you streamline a process and it made, working, with, certain people a lot easier and what was, what did you do and what was that impact of what you did? And I think that's a little bit more effective. And it's always kind of nice to kind of be accomplishment driven in that way.
We also recommend like experimenting with some colors and formats since publishing is a creative industry. Sometimes it can be nice to see a resume with like some color. And so definitely recommend like if you want to add like a little bit of flair to your resume and cover letter to add like some color. And some style, you can always just make sure that it's still legible since it's still a professional document. Of course, we still want to be able to read everything. But of course, adding like a little something to your resume and cover letter can really make you stand out. For example, you can also have like a little header, like you can see in the example, Millie Maxwell has like a little header with their initials. And so it could be nice to include that both on your resume and your cover letter. And, that makes it like the same and also can make your application stand out and look more fun and exciting.
Now we're going to switch gears and talk about the cover letter, which I'm sure people are groaning about because cover letters can be annoying, but they're really important. And I think it's a really great place for you to kind of tell us why you're interested and passionate for about the company. I think a cover letter is a great place to kind of tell us a little bit more about your resume, your accomplishments, some of the things that you've done, and why, what you can bring to the company or the role. The cover letter is also a really great place to, answer any questions that a recruiter might have. So that could be any confusing gaps or details, or if I see, a resume and it's all about editorial, someone was doing all this editorial stuff and now they're applying to a marketing role. My first question is, why are you applying to a marketing role? It seems like editorial is where you want to be. And then maybe, in the cover letter, you explain that you gained exposure to marketing, you met with you did a lot of informational interviews, and now you're kind of looking to switch gears and to learn a little bit more about marketing, and these are the skills that you've got. And you kind of answered my question, and it's really helped me kind of view you as a viable candidate. So the cover letter is a writing sample. We get a lot of questions about what the salutation should be and how to address the cover letter. You don't have to go overboard with it, finding, the hiring manager or anything like that. I think you can just say, dear HR team at Hachette Book Group, or dear, hiring manager at Orbit, whatever it might be. I think it's important to have a salutation because it is a professional document, but you don't have to go crazy, searching for a hiring manager and figuring out who to, address the cover letter to, because usually it's fine. You can keep the tone a little bit more conversational. It shouldn't be a regurgitation of your resume. You want to use it as an opportunity to expand upon your resume and talk a little bit more. We see a lot of times where someone says, my name is Leah Hartman. I found, this listing on LinkedIn on January 14th, and I'm excited. You don't need to kind of restate all of that. We know it. You can just kind of go right in. The cover letter should only be about 3/4 of the page. It doesn't have to be too long. Again, treat the recruiters kind of like babies. If it's too long, we will not read it. I think recruiters look at applications for a short amount of time. So you want to be, concise and effective. The first paragraph will be your introduction, discussing your passion for the role. The second paragraph is the meat of the cover letter, discussing your experience. And then the third paragraph is just the conclusion, summarizing your experience, recapping what makes you unique. So we have a bit of a kind of quick and dirty cover letter sample. So this person is applying for a sales internship position, and they say, I'm writing this letter to express my interest in the sales intern position. I was very excited to learn of this opening as I feel that my experience in sales can contribute to the role in the company. As a lifelong reader, I'm familiar with many Hachette Book Group titles such as Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee and Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. As a people person with strong analytical skills, I'm eager to gain more practical experience and would love to join the team at HBG. So not so long, pretty concise, but you've already established, why you think you're a fit for this role. You talk a little bit about your passion and why you're applying to the company. And then you tell us a little bit more about what you're going to be talking about later on in the cover letter, your strong analytical skills, and why you're excited to submit your application for this role. Then paragraph 2 is your experience. So this candidate says, I have worked as a sales associate for the last 2 years, honing my communication skills while handling the buying, marketing, and sales of merchandise. On a daily basis, I develop relationships with customers, resulting in a 20% increase in revenue through my time with the company. Additionally, I became an adept multitasker while overseeing social media marketing and fundraising endeavors, balancing multiple deadlines at once. Furthermore, in order to evaluate the store's profitability, I ran weekly sales reports and analyzed the results using advanced Excel functions such as pivot tables and VLOOKUP. So this person clearly looked at the job description. They noticed that communication was a big part of the role, organization, multitasking, and analytical skills. And they used the cover letter as an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about how they've excelled in communication, organization, and analytical skills. Again, it's not so long. It's, in a few short sentences, you can do a lot. And then lastly, it's just the conclusion. Throughout my work experience, I found that I'm the most successful when communicating openly with clients and coworkers. I hope to be able to bring these skills along with my passion for books to Hachette. My prior customer service experience, ability to multitask, strong analytical skills, as well as my strong work ethic will allow me to thrive as a sales intern. I would love to set up an interview, la la la. And again, it's not so long. You kind of reiterate the points that you were making throughout the cover letter. You tie it together. You thank the reader. You give them your email, and that's it. Again, it doesn't need to be so long. You want to make sure that your cover letter is telling us a little bit more than we saw on your resume. But it doesn't need to be so long. You don't have to go, you don't have to have a cover letter that's pages long. I've seen people submit cover letters where a huge paragraph is them talking about their passion for books and all that, and that's wonderful. That's not the place that I would put that there. By the time I was done with that paragraph, I was already, trailing off and may not read the rest of the cover letter. You have our attention and you want to be as effective. Okay, now that we've basically spoken for a long time, I am going to send out, I'll send our slides so that you have it. You'll have our emails. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so we can look at any of the questions that came in. And I will also type our emails in the chat. And I see so many questions. So this may take, I'm always like, it takes us a few seconds to read through.
No worries. I can also pull some. Daisy Gillum has been collecting questions in the chat, so I can definitely address some of the most popular ones. And just want to give both of you a virtual round of applause from myself and anyone that was such great information. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, your knowledge, and yeah, jumping into questions because I know we want to make sure to be timely and respecting everyone's time. But one question that came up top of mind here is kind of, could you speak about remote opportunities with Hachette? Like, what does that look like for internships or full-time roles and locations and things like that?
Yeah. So we are in the office in a hybrid model. So most of our full-time roles, I would say, are in person 2 days a week, and then we work from home the rest of the week. We are headquartered in New York, where we have our largest office, although, as Avni mentioned, we have offices throughout the US. So some roles will be in different office locations, but I would say most roles, if they're full-time, are probably in person. And if not, it'll indicate that they're open to remote in the job listing. For our internships, there's a little bit more flexibility, although I will say last year was our first true hybrid program, and I would say a bulk of the interns were based in an office location, and just because New York is our largest office, we had most of them here, although there were some remote interns. A lot of times that has to do with the department if they're open to someone working remotely. And again, it will indicate that on the job description, what is in person, what isn't. And sometimes it will say, either or. It's up to the intern on what they want.
Excellent. Thank you so much for addressing that because, we do have students located nationwide and it's always helpful to have that feedback. And it sounds like there's some flexibility, but it's definitely something that's being explored. So appreciate that. And a lot of questions that came through regarding jobs at Hachette. So as far as kind of an entry level career, what would you recommend for those positions for someone looking to get entry level? They might have some experience or they might not. What would that look like for entry point?
I definitely think that one thing that we recommend is if someone is interested in exploring publishing, one of the things we mentioned is checking out our internship opportunities, but beyond the internship opportunities, because we know a lot of people want to, jump in full time or they just want to transfer from another field into publishing. So maybe they'll look at the entry level jobs. I think one thing that we would also recommend is including a lot of your transferable skills where you can in your cover letter and your resume. So for example, maybe you don't have experience in publishing at all, or any experience even related to something that could seem related to publishing. Maybe you didn't work at a newspaper or a bookstore, but maybe you did something else on your free time, like you write in your own blog, or you started a bookstagram, or something that really anybody can do to show their interest in reading and writing. And I think that that's one thing that also shows that you are interested in exploring publishing as a career. We also like do recommend for maybe someone who wants to go into like a design role in publishing or something like similar, like editorial, but you have like some experience in a different field, like maybe you did some design work for another company, like maybe it was like healthcare or something. If you have like some similar experience that you can showcase like transferable skills, like you know how to use Adobe Suite for design, or like technical design work, you can always like transfer that experience into something that could be applicable. And we really look for people who are just very passionate about publishing and have some experience that shows their interest. One thing that I also think about mentioning is in your cover letter, excuse me, mention like why you're interested in applying for that imprint, or like maybe you have a specific title that you loved by Little Brown, for example. And so mentioning that in your cover letter is also a great way to stand out and show that this is actually like a job that you're very interested in applying for and not just like another application that you submitted. So I think that that also helps applicants stand out, especially when they don't have like experience necessarily in publishing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, really just exploring, and I know someone mentioned like freelance copy editing and all those different ways to kind of show the passion there. And that also came up regarding those that write. So as far as, presenting a book to be published, what would that look like for the industry, for someone that's interested to publish, poetry or a thriller novel or something like that?
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned, only work with agented authors. So if someone wants to get their own work published, the first step for us at least is to, get an agent, and on their behalf, on the agent on the author's behalf will send out the manuscript. There's tons of self-publishing and other ways, I think, to get your work out into the world beyond trade publishing. And I think we've seen definitely an increase in some of that self-publishing. HBG only works with agented authors. So the first step would always be to get an agent. But sometimes it can help, being in the industry. We actually do have a number of employees who are also published authors, and they sometimes publish with us and they sometimes publish with other houses. So it's an interesting kind of area, but the first step would be to get an agent.
Excellent. No, that's super helpful, and really just doing the research, right? Kind of what fits for the individual. And I saw another question come in related to, the creative side, but not writing, but graphic design. So are those kind of creative graphic design roles, are they contract or are they full time with Hachette?
Yeah, so we do have a multiple like types of design roles. So we do have like some contract positions and like temporary roles for designers, along with internships, of course. But we also do have full-time designers. We have design assistants, junior designers. So even for someone who might be like newer to the industry, we have a lot of design positions that are full-time with us. So we have a mix of both. And we also do like have a freelancer network where we do have like some freelancers that we reach out to and work with. So we kind of have a mix of everything as far as design goes.
Excellent. So I know it's the 1 o'clock hour, so I want, or Eastern time at least. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And we have so many questions. Perhaps we can connect and follow up, and I can send that out to our attendees for follow up to address those questions, more in full. But again, this recording will be available on the SNHU Career YouTube page, so anyone can rewatch the presentation. I believe Leah mentioned, that'll be available to send out, and of course, they shared their email addresses at the end on that last slide. Excuse me. So again, just an enormous round of applause from me and very likely everyone else in attendance for your time. And just want to, any closing thoughts of any last advice you want to share with the group, either of you?
I think we covered it all, but if you have any questions, you could always reach out. We'll send out the slides. And thank you so much for having us. We did not expect that we would have over 170 people here. So thank you for attending, and I hope you found it valuable.
Fantastic. Thank you both, Leah
Have
and
a great
Alani.
rest of your
Thank you.
day.
Have a great one,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.